What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Grindline Podcast. You're listening to episode 165. I am your host, Greg. I am here tonight with Ryan and Tyler, but also Max Bultman from The Athletic to join us in our trade deadline recap episode. How you doing tonight, Max?
Good, guys. How are you?
Good. Staying not sick, which has been the reoccurring theme lately.
Children are great, aren't they?
Amazing, especially when they start going to school.
I'm doing well. Can't really complain too much. Going to the regionals this weekend for the NCAA here in Worcester, so definitely excited for that. It's always a good time of year. Unfortunately, couldn't do it last year, so I'm glad to be able to do that again this year and see some prospects and stuff. So definitely looking forward to that.
Worcester, not to be confused with Worcester, right?
It's Worcester.
Well, we've got Max on tonight to kind of, like I said, do our trade deadline recap episode. The Red Wings did make a few moves. They shipping out of Troy Stecher, Luke Witkowski, Nick Leddy, and Vladislav Nemestikov, getting back some picks and some players. Overall, I liked it. It was about what I had expected it would be. But Max, I kind of want to get your take on what your feelings were going in and then how you felt coming out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Leddy deal was pretty good. I think in terms of getting the second round pick that they paid for him back, that alone was going to make it a pretty successful situation. And then I actually thought they got a couple players who, after getting a look at them last night, you know, from St. Louis's perspective, I'm sure it was largely to clear cap. But from the Red Wings perspective, like Oscar Sundqvist immediately looked pretty good last night. And, you know, he had the 2 empty net points, but the fact that he was on the ice for both of those empty net situations, I think tells you what the Red Wings like about him. They like that he's trustworthy defensively. He obviously brings a size element that they just have not had enough of this year. They've gotten pushed around by teams like LA, like Nashville, maybe to a little bit lesser degree Calgary, although, you know, obviously those are lopsided game. So I think they needed that. And I actually thought Wallman, it sounded like a guy Steve Yzerman's had his eye on for a while. And I think he saw why in that first game. Not a perfect player. He had a turnover. I think he could probably be a little crisper with his passing and all that, but broke up multiple plays in the neutral zone, I think partly because he does seem like an aggressive player and he could really skate. He's probably a better skater than Leddy. So that deal I thought was really good for them. I thought they'd get more for Nemestikov. I mean, fourth seems to be the established market value. So when I say I thought they'd get more, it's exactly what I thought they'd get, but I thought he was worth more. And so I'm a little surprised that, you know, especially as we saw players of kind of that profile have become more in vogue. But I guess just the fact that he doesn't have any term on his deal probably doesn't help. And he gets a 4th round pick. If I was a contending team, I don't see why Nick Paul, who went to Tampa, is a significantly better player to get a 3rd rounder than Nemestikov, but you know, whatever. And then Stecher for a 7th. You know, again, I think Stecher is a better player than he showed in Detroit the last year. I thought the first half last year was good, but you know, they get something for him before he becomes a free agent, and something's better than nothing there. So overall, you know, I think I gave him a 7 out of 10 when we did our ratings on The Athletic. I'm underwhelmed by the Nemestikov and Stecher returns, but they got something, and I think that's the important thing. And then I thought they did quite well in the Leddy deal.
Yeah, I would say going back to Vlad, isn't it the 3rd time he's been traded for a 4th round pick?
That's correct.
So it's just everyone gets their money back when they get Nemestikov.
That's right. Well, the Red Wings signed him, so they didn't actually give up a 4th round pick to get him. So there you go. It's
just the same pick over and over again that people are shipping back and forth.
Right.
I think on the other thing with the Leddy deal is that they said basically you rented Leddy, you got your money back, and then you got 2 players with him, which is kind of really all you. I think we would have been happy with getting our pick back and maybe a prospect. But like you said, after putting Sundqvist and Wallman right into the lineup and having Sundqvist do what he was, and I think he also brought kind of a little bit more of a gritty element because he is so big. He's not afraid to crash bodies. He's not afraid to go in the corner. And he even said when he was interviewed after the game that he liked how he played, but he's really trying to work on his 2-way game, and he knows he can do better than what he did last night, which is really good coming from, what's he now, 27 years old? A 27-year-old or 28-year-old that's just stepping in his game 1 saying he knows he can do better, which is really impressive. And the same thing, like you said, with Wallman, I thought he skated very, very well. You got to get the first game jitters out of the way, but overall, in after Yzerman going, I believe all the way back to Providence to watch him play, and get on that train. It's kind of impressive the way that all came together. And the Stetcher pick, I agree with you. It's just Stetcher wasn't going to come back anyways after the season, and you get what you can get for him. But I would probably agree with you. 7.5. I think the thing that got overlooked by a lot of people was Luke Witkowski getting shipped out with Leddy.
Yep.
Which is, I mean, a minor move. You brought Luke in to kind of protect the guys in Grand Rapids or fill in when needed, because he's, quote, versatile. But I think that overall, I agree. I would give it probably in that 7 to 7.5 area. But do you think guys like, I know Wallman had a weird issue where he could become a Group 6 UFA?
Yeah, if he doesn't play, I believe the number is 19 games. 19 or
17?
17, that's right. Thank you. Then yes, he won't have hit the 80 total that, if you've played 3 pro seasons and are 26 years old on an expiring contract with less than 80 games played, then you become that. Now, what I didn't realize, as Cap Friendly pointed out to me yesterday, that threshold was dropped because of COVID, so to 75. So he only needs to play, like you said, 17 games. One of them was last night, right? That was the first of the 17.
Yep.
Yeah. So if he plays 16 more games, he stays in RFA. I guess I'd kind of expect that to be the case, right? You figure if you're the Red Wings, it's not like your left side's overflowing right now with options. So
no one's pushing him out.
Barring an injury, I guess I would expect that to happen, and then he's an RFA, obviously. Although even if he were to become a UFA, if things go well here, it's not like he's going to break the bank to resign. So,
no, right now he's only making $725,000, and he's 26. So I mean, he hasn't played enough to earn a huge raise. But if he seems to have some promise, and like Stevie said, he was kind of stuck behind some guys in St. Louis. So maybe he gets some more minutes here, and he played more minutes. I think he had like 13 minutes last night, and his season high was like 11. So he's getting more time. He may see some special teams time, and it's kind of the same situation where you give them more and they either sink or they swim. It was kind of like the Vrana situation where Vrana was playing lower minutes, and you're like, well, is the pressure of higher minutes going to either crush him, or is he going to excel with it? And I think that could be the same kind of thing about Wallman.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, Vrana is interesting because it's like he's such a gifted scorer. Like,
absolutely.
Really for him, I don't think it was really sink or swim so much as it. He's been easing back in from missing so much time, and I don't know what you guys have thought of how he's looked. I really probably haven't noticed him as much this year as I did last year, outside of those moments where the puck gets on his stick and it's in the back of the net instantly, and that's his gift, right? Like it's amazing how good his release is. He's got 5 goals in 7 games, and I'm saying I haven't noticed him that much. That's crazy.
It's the kind of player that the Wings need. It's really the kind of difference maker that the Wings have not had over the last couple of years. A guy that can score kind of not at will, but if the puck's put in his area, he's going to put the puck in the back of the net. He's a finisher.
Yeah, I mean, there was a puck that came to him down. There was a puck that came to him down like below the circle, the right circle last night. And he got a shot off, and it was an angle that, like, it's got to be such a low percentage angle. But when it came off his stick, I was like, oh, that might be in, because that's him, right? It's like he scores these insane goals from crazy angles with, a fraction of a second that the puck takes from when it hits his stick to when it's in the back of the net. And it's, like you said, they haven't had that. I mean, Robbie Fabry has a really good release.
Yep.
That's the difference between a really good release and a holy shit release, basically.
Well, it's kind of the point you hope Zadina gets to, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, like, weirdly, like, Zadina's shot coming out of the draft was supposed to be like that but like, to me, it's really been his hockey sense and his playmaking that have popped more offensively than the shot. I mean, I think he's got a good release on the wrist shot, snapshot kind of thing, but the one-timer hasn't been that great. And really, even the wrist shot, you see moments where it really pops, but a lot of times it hasn't kind of beaten the goalie. And so that's, you're right. You're hoping that it kind of becomes that or something close. I mean, if it becomes to the level of Vrana's, like, you're in business. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's hard to account for a player like that, because you watch the whole game and you go like, okay, like, it hasn't, maybe a little bit of a quiet night for Vrana, and then you look and it's like, oh, he's got 2 goals, and that's, last night wasn't a quiet night. I thought he was really good. I thought last night was probably his best game yet. But there were definitely games, his first game back or whatever, where his first goal, it was like it was a nothing play, and he picks it up on the slide, turns around, it's a goal. Like, and I hadn't really noticed him the whole night. I think I had just said to one of the other writers, like, "Oh, Vrana's, kind of still easing back in," and then the next second he picks a puck in the slots in the net, and it's a game breaking quality, and it's why, for even though he only gets 15 minutes or whatever it is a night, he makes the most of it.
Yeah, we were, and for good reason, given pause by his injury and saying, well, I mean, it's a tough thing to come back from, and you hope he comes back at 100%. And some people were saying, well, it could take him 10, 15 games to ease back in and get back up to his level. It's just he hit the ice running, and that's what's so impressive about him is there were people that were talking, well, maybe they could trade Vrana if they could get a first and some pieces for him because of how good he was. I said, I don't think there's any way with before Vrana, how offense was lacking, that you could trade a piece like that, even with Raymond coming in and just blowing up the score sheet, even with Larkin having an out of his mind season, best season of his career, that you could trade someone like Vrana because it's a piece you absolutely need if you're going to try and make a playoff push within the next 2 seasons. You need that scoring up front. That way you can just focus on defense and fill in some bottom 6 pieces.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to look at the Red Wings roster and say that very many people are untouchable. I don't know that I would say really anyone outside of
We had
Larkin,
3.
Raymond, and Seider would be
Yep.
untouchable. But you are right that he makes a huge difference in terms, like, how many times did we hear Jeff Blashill say over the last 3 years, the Red Wings don't score easy. Well, Jacob Vrana does score easy, right? And is he the reason that the Red Wings are now scoring? I think it's 2.87 goals per game, which is not, the top half of the league quite, but it's much more middle of the league. I think it's 20th in the league. He's obviously only scored 5 of those, so we can't give him all the credit for that. But since he's been back, he's scoring, what is it, like 0.75 goals a game himself. So, the Red Wings, as they continue to grow, I think their biggest flaw is they let too many goals in, but that they do need to score more goals too. It's not like if they just could cut their goals down, they'd suddenly be a playoff team. Realistically, there's not that many playoff teams right now. The Los Angeles Kings would be one, but I think that's the only one.
Are you talking about goal differential?
Right now, I'm just talking about goals scored. Like, I think
the
Kings are the only playoff team right now that scored less than them per game. And the Kings are, pretty good defensively. But I think they're not in a position to take their offense for granted. To your point.
Yeah, I think that's part of the big thing, that if the Red Wings have the offense tied up, it's really the left side of the defense that you're looking at, which is where someone like Wallman comes in and could potentially help, where you could have someone like Edvinsson possibly come in next season and play. You're getting a guy like Johansson that's going to come over to North America and probably go to Grand Rapids, but has a shot to make the lineup. Yep. And it's really, I say the left side is completely open right now simply because you have nothing stellar there. You've got Mark Stahl, who you could re-sign again, but he's an offensive defenseman for the most part. But he's been probably one of our better defensemen on a lot of nights, just period.
Yep.
So there's spots available. And I think if you pick that up, and again, even with defensive forwards, someone like Sundqvist in the lineup every night, and play a more defensive game while having those offensive threats, I could see the Red Wings sneaking into a playoff spot with a healthy team next season. I said if Vrana would have been healthy from the start of the season, you probably would be much closer to Boston than you currently are.
Yeah, I think a lot of that depends on goaltending. I think if you're getting the goaltending from Alex Nedeljkovic that you got in the first 3.5 months of the season, then 1 or 2 pieces away from being able to challenge Boston. Part of that is Boston's arrow seems going to be pointing down. We'll see how Hampus Lindholm affects that. We'll see how Patrice Bergeron's future affects that. But yeah, I think with really good goaltending, you could be, probably 2 pieces away, but maybe only 1, depending on how good that piece is. In terms of if you see the continued progression, right? Like if everyone's stagnant, it's stagnant. But if guys continue to improve, I expect, I don't know how much better Seider even can get, but guys like Raymond to keep taking steps.
Can he? That's the question. Can he get better than what he is currently?
That's what's crazy. Is I think he can, but
I think he can too.
it's crazy. I mean, he's a superstar, and so that's what superstars give you, is they give you that quality. And I don't know how good Edvinsson will be, but if he gets to Detroit next year and makes a big impact, probably can't be quite as big as Siders, but if he can play 20 good minutes a night, or 18 good minutes a night for you, having seen him, he's a really good player, so that'd help. And you make a good signing up front, or you make a good signing on the blue line, and we'll see what some of these guys give you. But I think you can. They're still young enough that I think you can count on some continued progression from Veleno, from Rasmussen, from Zadina. How much? Great question. We'll see.
Yeah.
I don't think they're a playoff team next year, but I don't think it's crazy to think that with the right additions, they could be one. I just think it all depends on who are those additions and how much better do your internal guys get, and goaltending. If they get the goaltending they've gotten for the last 2 months, they have no shot, period.
Yeah, and that's going to really count on Grice will be out. It's who's that backup going to be? Is Ned going to continue his progression upward? You were in Sweden and you saw, the Frölunda Red Wings over there play. Do you see any people love Elmer Soderblom and how he plays? The videos are phenomenal. His plays look good. There are people hoping he can step in. I think that's a little bit unrealistic from where it stands right now. But do you see any guys where you look at them and you say their progression is where ahead of where you thought it originally was, or anyone that really stuck out to you that you said you could plop them on the Red Wings and they would actually make the team better from where they're at now?
Other than Edvinsson?
Yep.
No, that'd be the one. I mean, Soderblom, I think, has an outside shot, but I think at least a year probably in GR just to get used to it. But you never know. Like, sometimes guys surprise you, and I think people do underrate how hard the Swedish league is. Like, it's not an easy league, but there's just certain things about the game that I think Soderblom particularly will need to adjust to. Number one being how hard guys are going to come after him because of his size. Like, guys are going to take that as a little bit of a challenge, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think he can be a little harder to play against. I think he could probably, simplify the game and not overstick handle it at times, but his hands are great. You don't want to take those away from him. I think they're a difference maker at that size. I think his shot is legit. I think he's going to play, but I think probably a year in the AHL first.
Did you get to see William Wallander play?
No, I wish I would have done it a little bit different to where I could have seen. There was one game that I probably could have gotten to. It was just at the same time as the Frölunda game, and I kind of planned the trip around the Frölunda game, so I stayed for those. I probably could have done first and the last game at Frölunda and the middle game at Rugla on the Thursday, but I didn't do it that way, so I didn't get to see him play. I do kind of wish that I had made it work.
Did you get to see Albert Johansson play or no?
Yeah. He played at Färjestad, and they came to Gothenburg while I was there. So I saw him play. I saw him score. That was the game Nick Lidstrom was at. So it was a really nice goal. Jumped into the play, really good shot.
And I guess the second question is, what do you think of him as a player in terms of, affecting the rebuild? Do you see him going to Grand Rapids first, or do you think he's a guy that could step in, if needed?
I guess we'll see. I see him going to Grand Rapids first. I love his skating. That's the hallmark of his game. I would put it right there with kind of that Jake Wallman quality skating. Like it's at least that good, I think. And that's already pretty high end. I think Albert's feet are great. We'll see, similar, like Jeff Blashill's talked about how he wants Wallman to use his skating as a defensive weapon. I assume Albert's going to get that same directive because you can see how it works offensively. He joins the rush. He weaves great. He's got good hands. He's smart. He's aggressive. Those are all good things. Any NHL coach wants you to be able to defend, though, too. And I'm not saying he doesn't defend. I think they think of him as a competitive player, and I think they think of him ultimately as a two-way guy. But I think that can just be something that takes a little bit of time to get confident doing that and to get stronger. Like, he's still a pretty skinny kid. So that would be, I think, a year in Grand Rapids and let him run the power play there. That'd be my guess for him. But I like him. I think he's going to play, and I think he has the chance to be a pretty decent defenseman in the NHL. Like, I've thought for a while now, he could be a long-term partner for Moritz Seider, and they could complement each other pretty well.
You think he's a guy that is going to be an impact player in the NHL then, like a top four defenseman, would you say?
Well, it's hard for me to. So I don't know that, like, when you think of a top 4 defenseman, I think of a guy who's going to play 21 to 25 minutes a night, depending, right? Like your top
Yep.
pair guys are like 23, 25 minutes a night.
Mhm.
That's what Sider is. But what certain teams, and I think Tampa is the perfect example of this, do really well. When you have that elite guy, your Victor Hedman, what it allows you to do is you play a guy who might be, like in Tampa, it's Jan Ruda, who isn't a top 4 defenseman, but you play him with Victor Hedman and it works, right? So Johansson, I kind of right now see as like a decent chance to be a second pair defenseman. I think you could talk about like a Nate Schmidt type or a Nick Leddy type player. But when you play him next to Sider, it's like, okay, that works, right? Like it's like, and I think Leddy's a top 4D. I think Schmidt's a top 4D. But are they like top pair guys? Typically, no. I don't see Johansson as like a top pair guy. I think he's got a chance to be kind of that second pair guy who, when you play him with an elite number 1 defenseman, like I think Moritz Seider is going to be, if not isn't already, then you can have that be a legit pair, and then you slot Edvinsson on your second pair, and before you know it, you've got either Seider or Edvinsson on the ice for 46 minutes a night, and that's a really good way to live if you're the Red Wings.
Yeah, we had talked about it. I think we came to the consensus that we have Seider right now as a top 10 defenseman in the league.
Yeah.
But I think you could even do that right now. I had posted when we got Wallman that why not give Wallman a shot with Seider? Wallman loves to shoot. He could pinch up. He's got good skating, so he can get back if he needs to. But Seider is defensively good enough to where Wallman can join the rush and get up and pinch in. And I think it's the same kind of thing where you, like you said, you could take a guy that's probably like a true middle pairing guy and pop him up to the top because the defenseman you pair him with is so good that they can just make up for any deficiencies. Like you've seen, and it's not the prettiest situation ever, but you put Jordan Osterley with Mo Seider a lot of nights. And it works okay because Mo is that good that he can make up for it.
Yeah.
And even got Osterley a couple goals in the situation. So
now, ultimately, the flip side of that is you ask something different of Seider when you do that too, right? Like there is some level of, if you play Seider with somebody who is that rock solid player, now he's more able to go do what he does. And we've seen now that Moritz Seider is a much more skilled player than certainly I gave him credit for. I don't know about you guys, what you thought of him when he was first drafted. I didn't know that his hands.
We had no idea.
Right. So it's like, at some point you want to let him use that too. And I think he still can, but there, I heard a coach once say I think this might've been about Hronek and Chalowski, but it's like, how often do you have your 2 defensemen like below the offensive circles, right? And like, you don't want to get into that spot, right?
No,
so
bad.
You do want to have a situation where, both defensemen can join the play and want to join the play, but you have to know that if you're playing somebody with Seider with the idea of Seider will cover for him, you just have to know that means Seider's not going to take some of those risks that you like Seider to take. So that's the push and pull. I think you want Johansson to be a 2-way guy. You don't want him to be someone that his partner has to cover for. I think he's capable of it, but that's kind of where the push and pull is. And I think ultimately Edvinsson, kind of similar thing. It's like, I think he's really good defensively. I think that's a real strength of his game. I also think if I were the Red Wings, I would want to play him with someone else who's really good defensively so that he can keep pushing the envelope, because he's got a great set of hands too. I don't know that he's going to get quite as much like power play time as Seider, but we'll see. Like, he's not on the power play at Frölunda. But maybe in time he gets that too, but he can really transition the puck, got good hands. Like if I'm the Red Wings, I don't want to just ask him to be that defensive player. I want to put him with a good defensive player so that he can be everything he can be. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So what you're saying is the defense is about to get a lot better in the next few years.
I think so. I really do think it is. Yeah.
Well, that's the piece that needs to be improved, because I think you've got longer term guys like a Carter Mazer who's been good, who could come in and fill a middle role. You've got a Theodore Niederbach who's possibly a few years away, that can come in. And again, we've got a top 6 that I think is pretty solid, a decent top 6. And it's filling in those role players in those smaller guys who have the drive, or the lower end of the lineup guys who have the drive to just not give up what our current bottom 6 gives up.
Sure.
And so that's where I think we're headed. And like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if with the correct off-season moves, that we could possibly be in the playoffs next season. Have there been any guys you have had your eye on that are coming up in free agency that you see as possibly good fill-ins? I know at one point we had talked about possibly Ryan Strome as a center option, because center, you can never have enough center depth. But are there any guys that you've kind of looked at that said they'd be a really good complementary piece to this team and help them kind of take their game up?
I kind of look at Vincent Trocheck as that, and I think he's a guy who you think of what the Red Wings like, and it tends to be smart players, competitive players, well-rounded players. I think Vincent Trocheck is all of that, and it's almost kind of like if you took Robbie Fabry, and you made him a really strong defensive player too, and a true center, and so I think that's a pretty tempting thing for the Red Wings when he hits free agency. A guy who's on, PK1 for the best penalty kill in the league in Carolina. But also, like, he's not too far removed from like a point per game season. Or I think it was a couple of years ago, he's almost at a point per game. And so he's not that player on like a true level, but if he could be a 50 to 55 point centerman who's really good two-way and he can kill penalties for you, I think that's a really good piece. Now, can you get him on a moderate term deal that Steve Yzerman is like? That's a good question. He's coming up this is his big contract, right? So, is he willing to take 4 years or 5 years at, $5.5, $6 million? The Red Wings can afford it for sure, but are they
He's making 4.75 right now.
Yeah, so it's a healthy raise that you're offering. That's what I would look at. I think he's a really good fit, and I think he makes you a better team immediately. Like, you want to know, is he good enough to be the number 2 centerman on a contender? He's the number 2 centerman on, like, at worst, the 4th or 5th best team in the league right now. So you have him and Dylan Larkin as your top 2 centers, and I think you like that picture.
Oh, yeah.
So, obviously Carolina's defense core is a whole other animal. You're not Carolina just because you had Trocheck, but you're making progress, I think.
Have there been any defensemen you've looked at adding?
The defense market's kind of interesting. A lot of the top names, it's like Hampus Lindholm just extended. We anticipate Chris Letang is going to extend. He's a free agent, right, Letang?
Yeah.
Yes, Chris Letang. John Klingberg's another one.
Right. And I wouldn't be surprised if both of those guys extend with their current teams. So I don't know who the answer is on the left side there. I think, the Red Wings in bringing in Wallman have an internal option there that, he hasn't really ever done anything. So it's hard to say that's the answer, but it may be as simple as, like, you bring back Mark Stahl, you bring back Wallman, you bring in Edvinsson. If I was to look at the, kind of deeper at the defense market, is it Ian Cole? That's not an exciting name, but it probably is the kind of type you need to bring in. I don't know that you want to get involved in Ben Sherrod. I think I understand why teams like him for the playoffs. I'm not sure.
No, thanks.
In the Red Wings environment, that's going to be a good decision for them. Is it like a Brett Kulak kind of thing? But these aren't real, get you fired up names. So
yeah, no, not at all.
But that's like, those would be kind of like what I would look at and say these are the things that make sense for them. I don't think you're chasing Mark Giordano. I don't think you're circling back on Nick Leddy. Zadarov, I think, in Calgary is a free agent, but I don't know. Until this year, I haven't thought that much of him. So
yeah,
I don't see that guy in free agency that really stands out to me in the way that, frankly, there's multiple forwards that I think you could say, Trocheck, Burakovsky. These are guys who I think could be real fits for them without requiring an 8 years or sorry.
Nazem Kadri.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. Like, he's getting up there in age, and again, what's the term? And
he's going to get overpaid, I think, big time.
I agree, because it's like he has this massive year in his contract year. Well, you bring him anywhere but Colorado, and maybe even if he stays in Colorado, he's not repeating that. He hasn't done this before, so it's I would be scared by that one. But if you get him on a short enough deal, whatever. But it's I like Kadri's game. I really do like him as a player. He brings a lot of elements the Red Wings would like. But if it's more than like 3 years, I would stay away.
So do you think, though, too, on the free agent side, I mean, we're in what, year 2, year 3 of a cap freeze? I mean, do you think that maybe some of these deals we could start seeing are going to be a little bit more of that overpayment because they are going to bank and pray that cap's going to go up? I mean, I don't necessarily see Yzerman doing that, but when some of these RFAs are expiring, he's going to have some hopefully more wiggle room there.
Yeah, you would hope so, and I think I don't know how this changed once the Canadian government had the for a while they couldn't have capacity.
Oh, yep.
But it was supposed to go up by 1 million next season. I don't know if that is still going to be the case, but at one point that was the projection. So how does that affect things? But yeah, you're right. I mean, in theory, we shouldn't be that far out from the salary cap inflating again. But the players, as far as I know, still owe the owners a healthy sum of money, and it gets paid back slowly. And this is part of how. So it's it's going to be tough for a while for that. But yeah, at some point you can start to anticipate that. And obviously, I'm sure the Red Wings are hoping it happens quickly into Lucas Raymond and Moritz Seider's next contracts, which already look like they're going to be quite pricey.
Yeah, Vegas is hoping it happens real quick now too,
Vegas
because they're
hoping it happens tomorrow.
I think they wish it happened 2 days ago.
They're in a lot of trouble.
They're starting to pay the price for chasing that sexy object every single off season.
Absolutely. That's a great way to put it.
The last
what happens in Vegas, I guess. Huh?
Yeah, what happens in Vegas? Yeah, Dadonov happened in Vegas, and now he's staying in Vegas. So we'll see how that happens.
They've got that line of credit, now they can't pay it back.
But the last position we're going to have to, I mean, not the last, but another position we're going to have to fill in the offseason is backup goalie pending bringing Greiss back. But I don't see that happening. And there are actually a lot of free agent goalies coming up. Was there anyone you were looking at or anyone that stuck out to you? You got someone like a Garrett Sparks, like a Carter Hutton, like even Pickard.
I don't like the free agent goalies at all. I mean, it like Ville Husso, I guess, is coming up and he's been amazing in St. Louis. But if you're the Blues, like you got to just kind of move heaven and earth to keep him. He's been that good. So yeah, I don't like the free agent goalies at all. I don't know what the answer is there.
Dustin Tokarski's coming up as a free agent.
Korpisalo.
Louis Domingue.
Korpisalo is a UFA after this year.
Korpisalo is a good one. I like that because that's one where he's coming off a down year, but you've seen him do it. You've seen him do it in the playoffs. If you can get Korpisalo, I think that's your 10 out of 10. You know, he's having a bad year, but you got to think, okay, he'll come in and a new environment and just try to reinvigorate because you've seen him do it in the playoffs. You've seen him do it in the regular season. He's a good goalie. That's probably the best option out there, especially with being relatively young, other than Husso. I mean, but again, I'm just skeptical that he even gets to July 1. So
you think it's more of a trade market kind of situation then for a backup goalie?
I don't know what you do. I mean, it's just like, how many teams are sparing backup goalies anyway right now? So it's, I do not like the free agent goalie market though.
Yeah, the only other name out there is Braden Holtby, and then again, you're looking
That's another good one. Yep.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, because I mean, Jack Campbell's coming up at the beginning. You thought Jack Campbell would get the Vezina, and now you're hoping Jack Campbell gets a decent contract.
Yeah, depending on who you talk to, Jack Campbell was going to get the Vezina. I really like him as a goalie, but boy, Shesterkin and Markstrom to me are just a notch above, everyone else this whole year. Like Campbell's first half was amazing, but even then, like those two goalies have been Shesterkin and Markstrom to me are just a whole other level. And obviously Vasilevsky's in that tier, but like those two seasons, amazing.
Well, they said
Shesterkin MVP.
They said he's really the only reason the Rangers are where they're at, minus Adam Fox. So
yeah, I mean, I don't know how you could put him lower than second on your MVP ballot this year. Shesterkin, like he's been that big of a difference maker for them. And I don't think Markstrom's that far off from the top 5, if not in it too. I mean, the only thing there is they've got so many good players in Calgary. Yep. But he's got 9 shutouts? Like, come on.
Yeah. Yep. League leading 9 shutouts. And I heard that I'm like, your kid over the past 3 seasons? Like, no, 9 shutouts this season.
Right. And 2 of them against Detroit, or did they get a goal?
No, I actually think there may have been. I'd have to go back and look, but 2 sounds correct. I wouldn't be surprised. We're really good at giving goalies shutouts and giving rookies their first goals or hat tricks. That's what we're very good at.
So as far as I'm concerned, Markstrom's, when I've watched him, when I've covered his games, he hasn't even allowed a goal. I've watched him, other than that, obviously as well, but I don't think he's given up a goal to Detroit this year in 2 games. Yeah, both 3-0 Calgary wins.
Embarrassing. Not really, because they're a really good team.
I was just looking at the Hart Trophy winners for goalies. It's going back to 14-15 with Carey Price, and then 01-02 with Jose Theodore.
What would you guys do between Shesterkin and Matthews?
I think it's harder. I would do Shesterkin because Matthews is playing with Marner, who's doing really well, and he's playing with Grandpa Bunting, who is being propped up there. But I would say for a goalie like Shesterkin to do what he's doing, especially with how not great the rest of the Rangers team has been, I feel like that position it's much harder to do as good as he is doing in the way he's doing it. So I would put him number one. Matthews, I mean, phenomenal season, amazing numbers, great play all around. But I think it's harder for Shesterkin to do what he is doing. So
He might score 60 goals.
Yeah, but I still think that the team is still good. That Toronto team is still good. And Matthews, I don't think he'd still be really, really good, but Marner is also having a really good season and he's helping him out. So the defense, like I said, in New York, besides Fox, is not helping a whole ton. And Shesterkin seeing a lot of shots, and he's just been unbelievable and lights out. And I'd have him one. Matthews would be a close second.
I'm torn. I think what I would do is I would go Shesterkin, but what I think the writers will vote for is I think it'll be Matthews, just because, like you said, he might have a 60-goal season. And I mean, you don't score 60 goals and not win the MVP. That's not a thing. So he's having an amazing season, and obviously the biggest thing is what's going to happen when it comes to the playoffs. Obviously, that doesn't have anything to do with the MVP, but I mean, obviously,
ballots are due before. Ballots are due before.
Right.
Could be embarrassing for us if we vote somebody who goes on the first round, huh?
Yeah, he gets 0 goals in the first
Wouldn't
round.
be the first time.
I mean, it's interesting because the last 60 goal scorer, if I'm seeing this right, was Steven Stamkos in 11-12, and he didn't win the Hart Trophy that year.
He
So
did. Who won it that year?
Evgeny Malkin.
To me, if Matthews scores 60 goals and finishes top 5 for the Selke, that's really hard to beat. He might do both of those things.
The fact that we're even talking about a goalie being the MVP is insane, though.
It is. It's crazy.
It's hard to. You can't fall on the crutch of, well, one of their divisions is easier than the other, because really the East has been such a freaking shit show in terms of how good the teams are.
Yep.
Like Shesterkin's keeping the Rangers afloat, and I mean they're stuck behind. I just had it up here. Pittsburgh and Carolina, but only by 2 points on Pittsburgh. And then they're trying to hold off Washington in that offense. But then you've got Toronto on the flip side. They're trailing Florida and Tampa with Boston right on their ass. And then we won't talk about the rest of the Atlantic Division. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, I love what Shesterkin's doing because he's making incredible saves, it seems like, every night, and there's multiple in them. And then the Rangers offense, they can just hopefully come back and take control of it. But even still, I think it was a 1-0 win over Carolina the other night. And you can pretty much credit that entirely to him because I think they're outshot like 45-15 or something like that.
Wasn't that Georgiev in that night?
Yeah, it was Georgiev.
Yeah.
Oh, that was Georgiev that night?
And he might be looking for a home too.
He might be.
Well,
ooh.
I stand corrected. But still, I mean, that shows you what Shesterkin's been dealing with in that sense, because it's like the Red Wings, but they're actually winning games, and because they're 40-19-5 right now.
Oh, don't get me wrong.
Only putting up 15.
Those are my top 2. Like, there's no doubt. I mean, those are the top 2. It's just who's 1, who's 2. I don't know the answer. I was just curious what you guys thought.
I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Seider get Norris votes? He's not going to win, but is he going to get Norris votes?
You think someone's going to throw him on there?
Historically, if you look at how many defensemen usually end up on somebody's ballot, Prashant tweeted about this recently. I think it's like more than like 15. So got a chance to be on somebody's ballot. I think when I think about it, like the question that the Norris ballot asks is rank your top 5. He wouldn't be in my top 5. So it's hard for me to say, he's going to be in there. But if someone wanted to put him 5, I don't think there'd be like, a national revolt over it. Like, it wouldn't be totally like, what are you thinking? I understand what they would be thinking. To me, it's just like, you look at the years, first of all, there's a top 3, right? The top 3, Makar, Yossi, Hedman. Like, to me, that's the top 3. And then you have some really good other players. I think McAvoy and Ekblad have been awesome.
Absolutely.
Fox, the reigning winner, I don't think he's been quite as strong this year as last, but still really good. Devin Taves, like how do you quantify the fact that he plays with Makar? He's been really good too, though.
Absolutely.
And taking his offense up to the next level. Crystal Tang's having another good year. I'm sure I'm forgetting people.
But do they take the other factors into consideration? Like he's a 20-year-old rookie on a bad team.
But that's not what the Norris asks, right? The
It's
Norris
just
asks,
who's the best.
defense,
Yeah.
right? So it's it's tough. And like Hedman, to me, it's like if you told me you're picking one guy, that this is how I think about the Norris. Like you're taking one guy for this season. Like who is it?
Yep.
And like it's really hard to not pick Hedman, but like I think McAvoy, Ekblad, Yossi, Makar, like that's a really good 5. So like, to me, could I honestly argue that Seider had a better year than any of those guys, or Fox, or Taves, or I don't know. Like I would think Seider's probably in the tier with like Heiskanen and stuff like that, of guys who are like superstars. But like, could I really argue that they're in the 5? That's kind of how I would think about it. But if someone wanted to put them in the 5, it's not like I'd tell them they were crazy. It's just not how I see it.
Watching both Seider and McAvoy just about every night, because my girlfriend likes the Bruins and people around me obviously like the Bruins, I would take Seider over McAvoy.
They're similar,
I think Seider makes a lot less mistakes than McAvoy does. And I know McAvoy's obviously a little bit older, but I think Seider makes a lot less mistakes at a way younger age.
Interesting. McAvoy's got some of the best defensive numbers in the league. Like his shot suppression, chance suppression are elite. I think they're as good as it gets, actually, if you look at it right now.
Yeah, I think he's at a 99. His card, I think, was at a 99. His J Fresh card. It's like across the board, almost perfect numbers. Yeah.
I guess the other thing too, and I don't know what your thoughts are about this, but obviously the game's played a lot faster nowadays. Mistakes happen, I guess, a lot more frequently. You just think that's why like a lot of older folks will kind of complain about the turnovers and stuff like that, just because the game is kind of played a less perfect way than it has been in the past, I guess.
Yeah, that could be. I mean, I think the game keeps getting faster for sure. And like, it's kind of the paradox of like, I agree. You want to avoid mistakes at all costs. Like mistakes is what kills you. But at the same time, if you're not making any mistakes, unless you're like Sidney Crosby, what it probably means is you're probably not trying as much things as you could either.
Yeah, you're not taking risks.
Yeah, there's that push and pull, and it's like there's very few guys who can make a lot of mistakes and still be really positive players. But the ones who, I mean, McDavid isn't flawless by any means.
No,
but so good that like he can make 3 mistakes in a game and it doesn't matter. He makes up for it. He has 9 grade A's every game or whatever it is. So it's a good question. I mean, I do think if there are more turnovers, then it is because of the pace, and it is because you're going fast and you got to do things at high speed. It's really that's why I think it's such a valuable trait. That's why I think people need to be more patient with Jack Hughes, is because he was always going to take a little bit of time, but what he always did well was whatever he did it at top speed. And in the modern NHL, that's gold.
You got to do it. You got to avoid the big guys. That's what you got to do. You got to stay out of the way and make room for yourself.
Right.
Does Calder ask the same question as Norris? Who's the best rookie?
I think the question is the rookie who was most proficient in his first year of competition.
So that's a little different. Now, that could also take into account the team you're playing on, the situations you're put in at the age you're at. So, I mean, hands down, that's Mo Seider.
I just think people need to recognize that there's a lot of really good rookies in the NHL.
Oh, yeah, there are.
I do think Seider is having the best season right now. Yep. But I just think the whole like by a landslide is exaggerated, because like look at what Matt Boldy's doing. Like, are you telling me Matt Boldy's not really, really proficient?
Well, look at Caulfield coming on recently.
Yeah, sure, right. And
look at Jeannot in Nashville.
Like, Jeannot, Raymond, I know people are annoyed about bunting, but to me, as long as you're eligible for an award, you're eligible for an award. The better argument against bunting is he's playing next to a guy who may be the MVP, and how much of that is, factoring into some of his production and all that. But I think Seider's been amazing. Like, I'm not trying to harsh people's parade. I just think the number one thing you want to avoid is saying like it's not even close, because I think that really does a disservice to all the really, really good rookies in the league.
Yeah.
Ultimately, do I think Seider will probably end up winning this award? I do. but it's a really competitive race this year. There's a lot of great rookies.
Zegras has kind of fallen out at this point, right? Would you say?
I don't think I think lately he hasn't he had that stretch in the middle there where it was like, wow. And I think it's come back a little bit, but he's still a really good player.
Yeah.
He's still a really, really good player.
Oh yeah. I think he's going to be a difference maker going forward. He's probably a superstar at one point or another.
Yeah. No, I mean, and what's funny to me is like sometimes some of the stuff that he tries, you almost wonder like there was a clip the other night where he went between his legs on a breakaway. And it's almost like, man, is that really the better play? Like, I know it's a cooler play, but like, wouldn't you have just been better off shooting that? I don't know.
Yeah, because I think he would have breakaway and did that, and I think it went wide. Where if he would have just handled the puck and shot it, probably would have went in. But he's going for the highlight reel, which the coach when he got back to the bench was probably like, "Why the hell did you do that? Just shoot."
Can you imagine if he did that 10 years ago in the NHL? What would have happened? He wouldn't have saw the ice again.
And I'm glad, for the record, that that's changed. I want Trevor Zegras to try.
Oh, yeah.
I love watching it. But there are some plays where you're like, what I think is the most amazing about Trevor Zegras are the plays where the thing that he did is what allowed the chance to happen, right?
Yep.
That's what was amazing about that Michigan pass.
The flip over, yep.
That was the best way to get that puck to that guy, and it scored, right? There's other things that he does where he's going down the wing. You'll see him set it up and do this crazy like spinorama pass, but it's because the lane was blocked in front of him. So he had to go behind to avoid the stick. That's what's amazing about Zegras to me, is that his skill and his creativity allow him to solve problems. But there are times where I think when he does that, like between the legs on the breakaway, you're kind of creating a problem for yourself. And that's not as amazing. Yeah. But what's amazing,
you're lowering your scoring chance.
Right. So just know when to use it. It's not about the highlight. But the best part of the highlight is that he took a play that should have been low percentage and made it high percentage. That's what's amazing.
So you go back to that whole push and the pull argument then, right? You want him to make the highlight reel plays, but you want him to make the simple plays when they're there to be made, right?
Just make the right play, right? And the crazy thing for him is that the right play can sometimes be the more complicated play.
Yeah.
Because he has the skill to pull it off. But it's just make the right play. I think that's all any coach would ask their players of: make the right play. And for him, what the right play looks like is a bigger pool than it is for 95% of guys, 99% of guys, because 99% of guys don't have his skill and creativity, but he does. And so it's going to be a challenge for him at first, but I think I think he's a superstar. And I think his highlight reel is already in the same tier as like the McDavids and the Cale Makars of the world. But like, you look at Makar. Again, one of the things that makes his highlight reel so impressive is it's like he created a chance out of nothing. You don't want to take a chance and reduce it. You want to create it out of nothing. And that's what Zegras can do, and that's what he does do when he's at his best.
So before we move on to the last section of the night, I just need to read a quick message from our sponsor, DraftKings. The NHL season has been packed with dirty dangles, hat tricks, and big wins. As the action rolls on, DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, has your shot to win big too. New customers can bet just $1 on any team and get $150 in free bets if they win. That's right, a bump in the win column for your team means free bets for you. If Sportsbook isn't available in your state yet, you still have a shot to light the lamp. Everyone can play for huge cash prizes with DraftKings daily fantasy hockey contests, and DraftKings is giving all new customers a free shot at millions of dollars in total prizes with their first deposit. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now, use promo code THPN, bet just $1 on any NHL team, and get $150 in free bets if they win. That's promo code THPN at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. 21 or older, restrictions apply. See show notes for details. Now, I know we're running out of time, but I got one question. I think we covered all the other questions with just our discussion, but there was one question, and it is about coaching, so I apologize ahead of time. But if Blashill is not back next season, this is more of a gut feeling, I guess, kind of question. Do you think they go with someone within the organization, a big name carousel coach, or an out-of-market guy?
So the question is, if they make a coaching change, would they replace someone from within the organization? A carousel coach is in like someone who's like already been
big name coach on the market. Yep.
Or something.
Gallant was available again.
I think I'd probably go with the third option. Like I would have a hard time if you're making that change. I would have a hard time thinking you like the assistants enough to promote one of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like yeah, if you're making a coaching change, I don't think you're promoting one of the assistants. I don't think, one of the guys who's on the, I mean, I guess you could look at like a Montgomery, but I don't think, I don't think you're going for like a Quenville Babcock kind of thing. So I
Please
guess
don't.
I would think more like someone who's an assistant somewhere else who's ready for their chance or whatever. It depends how out of the box you want to get. There are coaches out there who I don't think the NHL has done a good enough job hiring out of Europe, for example.
Absolutely.
But do the Red Wings want to be the ones to take that chance? I can't fault them if they don't. If they want to hire someone who's been a top assistant under Lane Lambert's a name that always gets brought
Yep.
up. Talk about potential Red Wings coaches because he goes back with Steve Yzerman. But to me, what would be the most interesting about Lane Lambert is that he's worked for Barry Trotz, who for me is one of the 5 best coaches in the NHL. So, you could think of it that way. But, I know when I say that, everyone's going to get in the tizzy and they should do this. Like, we got to see if they're going to make a coaching change first. And until they do, I'm inclined to think they stay with their guy because they keep extending him.
Everyone's all about putting the cart in front of the horse right now. They're like, well, he's here now. But if he wasn't,
yeah,
then what?
I know. I'm only answering because they asked it. I don't want this to be misconstrued that I think this is happening.
I agree with Lambert being a good option. He's a name that's been thrown around. I think even Helene St. James did a write-up or something about him at one point about Lane Lambert. But another name that gets thrown around is Ricard Gromborg, simply because he's done so well with the Swedes and he's coached a lot of the national teams and just seems to be really good with the younger guys, really good with the players in general, but then isn't afraid to get fired up when the time is right. And then another one that's always been interesting was Igor Larianov, simply because of his coaching past and his international stuff too. I don't like the coaching carousel. I think at some point a sport needs fresh voices, fresh systems, different stuff brought in than what's recycled over and over again. So I would tend to agree there.
Well, some of the other Europeans, to your point, I mean, Finland's, won the gold medal at the Olympics this year. Jukka Jalonen, I believe is how you pronounce it. That's a country that always seems to outperform its talent and certainly did in winning the Olympic gold this year. You look throughout Sweden and you have, Sweden's national team's coach is Johan Garpenlöv, but they've got coaches over in Sweden who, I've heard really good things about it. Obviously, I've now met Roger Ronberg. I think he's a really bright mind. He coaches Frölunda. I think Cam Abbott at Rugla, who's a Canadian who's coaching in Sweden with his brother Chris as the GM there. They've turned that program into one of the premium, they just won the European Champions League. They might win the Swedish Hockey League this year at Rugla, the Abbott brothers. You look at, I've heard great things about the next guy who's going to be Sweden's head coach, Sam Holm. And I think, in Skellefteå, one of the former Frölunda coaches, assistant coaches, Robert Olsen, who coached with Ronberg and Gronborg at the World Juniors on that staff. Skellefteå is a great team. So there's a lot of really good coaches. And I do wonder if someday somebody's going to give them a shot. I don't know when it'll be, but I think, NHL teams in general will benefit from broadening their horizons if they get but it's just like you gotta be willing to take that risk, and you got to surround them with the right thing. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if like the next team to hire a coach out of Europe wants to bring in an assistant who's been in the league for a really long time and knows, the NHL rhythms, the NHL tactics, what, has done some trial and error already, so you can save them some time. Those are all, I think, fair things. Like when you've been coaching in one environment and you come to a different one, having somebody who's been around. I think about I'm a college basketball fan. Michigan basketball, Jaron Howard, I think, is a great head coach. He had been in the NBA, so he brings in Phil Martelli to help, and Phil Martelli's been a help to him. And so I think long term, some NHL team is going to make a really good hire out of Europe someday. Is it going to be this year? I don't know. Who's it going to be? I don't know. But when they do, I think if they do their homework and they do their vetting, they're probably going to get a really fucking good coach that a lot of teams ignored for too long.
I 100% agree.
If there's an organization that is forward thinking and has roots deep in Europe, it's the Detroit Red Wings. And I would not be shocked if it would be the Red Wings that would be the first to hire out of Europe. Much like a couple of years ago, where the college coaching carousel started with I can't think of his name, the guy that went to Dallas, and
Jim
then
Montgomery.
they had Jim Montgomery, and then they had He was at North Dakota, coached at Philly, and now he's coaching in Seattle.
Dave Hackstall.
Yeah, Hackstall. Yeah.
And then David Quinn went to the Rangers after
The
being,
Rangers.
Jeff Blashill was a college coach. That's
Yep.
really how he got into the Red Wings organization, was from his work as a college coach. And he'd obviously been in the USHL as well, and then went through the AHL. So John Cooper coached his way up. I don't
Another
know
one.
Cooper did Cooper do college, or did he just go straight from USHL to the AHL?
I think he coached in the AHL with the Lightning. He coached for Syracuse.
But straight from the USHL, I'm saying?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, but you come in waves, and you kind of find there's a lot of good coaches in the world, and it's hard for me to imagine here's how I'll put it. It's hard for me to imagine the only coaches in the world capable of coaching in the NHL are the ones who were born in North America.
Yeah, I agree.
Hoop went from the Green Bay Gamblers to the Norfolk Admirals.
Okay.
And then to Tampa.
Yep.
Yeah, then Crunch, then Tampa. Yep.
This might be a weird question, but and I have no idea what the actual answer is to this. So has there ever been a Swedish or a Finnish head coach in the NHL?
I think there's been a European coach before. I think it's just been a really long time.
Too long, I'm assuming.
Alpo Suhonen was and Ivan Halinka were the two head coaches. They were the first.
Thinking about that's kind of crazy that all other coaches have been North American.
Do you think it benefits them more, though, staying in Europe? I mean, in a way, granted, the players are coming here, but if they're in a great situation, like Max, you just mentioned all those guys in the Swedish league, why would you leave what's working so well?
Well, I think there's a lot to that, right? And especially if you think about typically teams that are, you often see good teams fire their coach mid-season. And that's when you're pretty much hiring somebody who's available. But if you're firing a coach after the season, it's often because you were a bad team. And then if you're a coach over in Sweden or in Finland, or you coach a national team, or whatever, you have to be like, all right, I might only get one shot at this, right? Is that where I want my shot to be? Do I want it to be in Buffalo or Arizona or Ottawa, where coaches haven't had the longest lifespans? Nothing against any of those places. I love Buffalo. They just have made a lot of coaching changes. I love the city of Buffalo. I would live there. But if I was a coach, I'd be a little nervous to uproot my life, especially from another country, and move there, knowing how short-lived the lifespan has been for some of those places. I don't know. So you're making a fair point. There are considerations like that I think a coach would have to make.
Awesome. Well, Max, we love having you on. Thank you for coming to talk to us tonight. You guys got anything going on at The Athletic? Any deals going on? New promotions that people can take advantage of? If you are not subscribed to The Athletic yet, I don't know what is happening with your life, especially if you're a Detroit hockey fan or Detroit sports fan in general. But is there anything going on you want to kind of plug, promote?
I'm checking right now to see what the deal is. It looks like we still have $1 a month going. I don't think that's going to last much longer. I kind of doubt it. I kind of doubt that it even gets through the end of the month. So if you go to my Twitter at @M_Bultman and just click on any of the links that I tweet out, when you open it, it should give you that offer. I don't know what happens if you just go to theathletic.com. But definitely when you click on one of the links from my Twitter, it will show up. So I would love it if anybody wants to join on, and we love our subscribers, and we try to have a lot of back and forth in the comment sections to make sure you guys feel like you're getting your money's worth. So
all your live stuff now has been excellent. You go on all the time to take questions about everything, and it's been the interaction. I think that's one of the things that I love about doing what we do, is just the interaction with the fans, getting the questions, talking back and forth, because that's kind of how you really grow the community, and you guys have been doing a great job with that. But like you say, you can follow Max online. It's at @M_Bultman on Twitter. Again, Max, thanks for coming on. We love having you on.
My pleasure, guys. Take care.
You too.
Good, Max.
Once again, we'd like to thank Max from The Athletic for coming on to talk to us. Super insightful always. We get into these deep rabbit hole discussions all the time, and it's kind of hard not to do it because he just knows so much and brings just a wealth of knowledge and perspective to the table. And he's a busy guy, so we love to thank him for coming on and taking the time to do that with us. But we are at about showtime. I'm going to throw over to Ryan first because Ryan was at the last game and he got to see Oscar Sundqvist get his first 2 points as a Detroit Red Wing, and Jake Wallman just his elite skating ability. So I'm going to throw it to you, Ryan, and then we'll get you, Tyler, and then I will sign us off.
Yeah, it was nice. I went with Brandon Case. He came in from Grand Rapids for the game last night. It was fantastic. Seeing Sundqvist out there with Giovanni Smith, it was actually neat to see a line of size. I feel like it's been a better part of a decade since we've been able to see something like that for Detroit. That has actually been a bit of skill and also the ability to hit the shit out of people. So he was out there. He was aggressive, as Max mentioned earlier. They had the faith in him already to throw him out there on the PK, and also at the end of the game with empty net out there for final several minutes, really, if you will. And it was it was refreshing. He came in, you could tell in the presser when he got introduced that he was excited. Same with Wallman. I mean, you figured out that what Yzerman's been watching him for about 7-8 years, back to Providence, I think it was. So you have two guys that are getting a fresh start from St. Louis. They came out, they performed well. Wallman's skating was definitely on display. And as he said when talking about himself, I mean, he mentioned that was a strong suit, but also a thing that he likes to do a lot is shoot the puck. He was finding lanes last night, and it was impressive. It's hopefully that continues, that they both have that confidence. I think he has 17 games that he has to hit that. So if he somehow can be retained on an RFA status for 1 year, I think that works out great. But even still, I think if he performs well, then maybe they sign him for cheap. So bringing Wallman back, I mean, if this is what we're going to see night in and night out. He kind of flew throughout the lineup from what I noticed. He was out there a couple times with Seider, and then all of a sudden he was out there with Lindstrom. So he was kind of back and forth, but he didn't look uncomfortable or out of place out there at any point that I thought, at least when I was actually paying attention to it. And same with Sundqvist. He was out there. He was being aggressive. He was throwing his body around, but he was also causing havoc in front of the net and creating some chances. And played very sound defensively. It was exciting. The crowd last night was fantastic for being a Tuesday night, a team that's been struggling of late. They came out 6-3 win over Philly, and it was a fun game. Got to see a lot of people off the Red Wings Twitter, which was a kind of actually unexpected. So that worked out even better. But yeah, it was again a fun game to be at. Detroit looked like a hockey team, with exception of a little bit of a stretch there in the second period, but it was just another good night, and just hopefully one of those things that they can catapult off of. And Vrana being back, I think Max mentioned this as well. I'm not sure if you guys touched on it when I dropped off there for a few, but he's kind of reinvigorated this offense, and it's brought out the best in Larkin again. And it's fun and awesome to see. And just Vrana being back in general is just beautiful because he's flying all over the ice. It's like he hasn't missed a beat. It's makes you wonder where they'd be at right now if he was there all season.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I'd say they've definitely they're winning some of these games that were much closer. Now the blowouts, who knows? Maybe him being around when Bert wasn't in Canada changes those games around. But overall, I thought it was a great performance last night. Other than that, the trade deadline, since I gave it a solid B. I'm not too upset. I mean, we go back to talking to Daniela, like they're not going to do wrong, and they didn't do wrong. They did what they had to do, and they being Steve, you guys mentioned it. They brought back a second rounder for Leddy and what was basically a rental package, and they got 2 roster players out of it that they made an impact in their first game. So we'll see what happens. I'm not too upset about it. The Blashill piece will survive. We'll see what happens in the off season, but yeah, that's kind of where it's at. There's my quick recap, basically, of everything that we just talked about. So, other than that, RD Ryan 33.
Did you see my tweet earlier?
Which one?
About Sundqvist?
I don't know.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question. Did Sundqvist remind you of another former Swedish Red Wing player at all? If you had to compare Sundqvist to another former Swedish Red Wing player, who would he have been the most like?
Wait, does his handedness have anything to do with it?
That's not what I'm going for.
And he compared himself to Thomas Holmstrom.
That's what I'm talking about.
Is that where you were going with that?
Yes. So looking at him, and I feel like if he is anything like a Thomas Holmstrom, like kind of what we hoped Rasmussen would be at some point. But I think that if Sundqvist, who has some skill to him, and the whole St. Louis fan base seemed to love him, absolutely.
Sunny.
And he said that even after that game he had, Ryan, like I was saying earlier, he said, it was a good night. I had a good game, but I'm still working on my 2-way play. I know I can be better than what I was. I'm like, dude, you were you were better than 50% of the roster's been for the entire season. So
Yeah.
I think if he could even, and I know we've been looking for a second line center, and minus the expensive names like a Trocheck or a Kadri or a Strome could Sonny play second line center? And that's the thing. He says his
Yeah.
natural position is center, but he's been played most on the wing in
Mhm.
St. Louis. So I think that's one thing, is if he could be anything like Holmstrom, I mean, that's something with the tenacity he seems to have, the no, not shy to throw the body, not shy to make the check or go to the corner. That's something we need, because really you got guys like Burt that are doing that. Larkin will do it when he can, but you don't. Zadina has been better at going to the corners, but you don't have a lot of guys that are willing to go in, muck it up, and dig out pucks.
Especially big guys.
Yeah. I mean, he really is like, how big was Nemestikov?
6'2", maybe.
6'2", I think.
Was he?
6'1".
So he is pretty much literally his replacement.
Yeah.
And just younger and probably a little bit more skill there, potentially.
Yeah, I don't think Nemestikov ever played center, though, did he?
Well, I mean, he had the ability to do so.
5'11", Nemestikov.
No way.
Vlad's only 5'11"?
Hold on.
Wow.
Elite prospect, 6 foot.
Okay, well, still, he's got 3 inches on him.
Yep.
And the body weight, but he's doing all those things that you had Vlad doing. He just filled that void.
Oh, yeah. Sundqvist has like 20 pounds on Vlad.
Uh-huh. So you got a guy that can do the things that Vlad does. He's got speed, and he's bigger.
Yep, I would agree.
So I think that's part of the genius of the trade. I think is Vlad got shipped out, then you bring this same type of guy in that's bigger, and it works out great.
Tyler, final thoughts?
Yeah, final thoughts are, I know everyone's doing the grades of how the trade deadline went and everything like that, but I do not look at the Detroit Red Wings as I do my other sports teams that I follow. Steve Yzerman, there's not really much second guessing. He hasn't given you a reason to second guess. So whether he did a lot or didn't do much at all, I mean, I'm going to trust that Steve Yzerman, explored every option, and if he didn't make a move, he didn't make a move for a reason. So and I'm sure maybe as time goes on we will second guess him a little bit more, but I guess that's just kind of the way it goes. But for right now, I have full confidence in him. The trade deadline I thought went really well. I mean, obviously nothing, I wasn't blown away by everything, but I kind of, like Max said, I mean, it's the fact that you could get the pick back, and then you'd also got Sundqvist and Wallman in that same deal for a guy that was going to leave at the end of the year no matter what. I mean, you really take that. And then the other 2 deals are kind of washes. I mean, those guys are going to leave anyways. Maybe Nemestikov re-signed, but regardless, I think B-, A+. I mean, you can really kind of play with it like that. But I mean, my final thoughts really are just, it was a good trade deadline. Hopefully the season continues to get better. I'm looking forward to seeing Sundqvist and Wallman continue to play well as they did in the first game. And then hopefully we do see Bergeron at some point, although Steve, I think, touched on that and said that that's probably not going to happen because he wants Grand Rapids to succeed. So you can follow me on Twitter at SealDog91.
You can follow me online at Bringing the Wing. You can follow the Grindline Podcast online at Grindline Pod. We'd like to give a shout out to the Hockey Podcast Network, who hosts us and gives us the ability to put our podcast out to the corners of the earth. We also give a shout out to Howie's Hockey Tape, where if you use the promo code Grindline, you get 10% off your order. If you use that same promo code at Bring Hockey Back, you get 12% off your order. Vintage Detroit, who is always awesome to us. If you go follow them on Twitter, they're the only place you should get any Detroit jersey or sportswear from, is Vintage Detroit. They're absolutely awesome. Their stuff is as close to like the on ice product as you're going to get, without spending $1 bazillion on an on ice jersey, right, Ryan?
Oh yeah, if you're getting a Canadian made.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can't get them. What do you mean?
Oh, you can get them.
Dr. Rowan.
Where?
Dr. Rowan,
Rowan.
he figures that shit out.
Hundreds of dollars,
I want
Tyler.
one.
Hundreds of
Yeah,
dollars.
I don't care. I want
And
one.
it is very obvious how much better those Canadian made ones are than
Absolutely. And we also like to give a shout out to our merch shop, where if you go to redbubble.com and search the Grind Line, you can get our designs on a bunch of different stuff. They are good. They are selling. I like them because I made them, and I'm not biased at all. But that's going to do it for us tonight. So for Ryan and